Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Ziggurat? It is a first-person roguelite, procedurally generated. It involves magic. And it was an early access game, and it no longer is. It's by a company called Milkstone. They have not really created anything else of worth, though they have made a lot of games. And maybe it's unfair to say nothing else of worth. I'm sure something they've made in the past has been good, but there's really not a lot to see because it wasn't on Steam, and they haven't made anything really noteworthy. But Ziggurat comes along with some pretty reasonable recommendations coming out of early access. And the question is it any good? Well, we're about to find out, are we not? So let's just jump right in, shall we? You can choose from a number of different wizards, at least if you've unlocked them. As you can see, I haven't quite unlocked that many yet. The amount of work you have to do to unlock some of this stuff is actually kind of insane. You start with Argo, the basic apprentice wizard, and I've unlocked Kraz, who has a very powerful magic wand, but smaller mana pools for other magic disciplines. And then if I do a bunch of other stuff, I'll be able to unlock a bunch of different wizards. But let's go with the default wizard for the time being. You got 3 difficulty modes, easy, normal, and hard. Normal is ridiculously hard, and hard is, I assume, masochistic, and easy is, well, tolerable. But we're going to play it on normal because, well, we should, shouldn't we? So, here we go. Welcome to the Ziggurat, Mr. Bond. This is a procedurally generated labyrinth, and you can see you're fighting in first person. You are a wizard, a very short wizard, it appears. I don't know, I'm looking at the perspective of this, and frankly, I'm seeing someone who's about 3 feet tall, but, you know, it's nice to see those that are vertically challenged get proper representation in the game protagonist world. You are immediately given another weapon outside of this. This is a magic wand, which has 2 different attacks, and it will recharge its mana over time. This is a staff of some description. This is a serpent staff. It poisons enemies, and there's a limited mana pool available for this thing, as you can see in green over the right-hand side. And as I enter this room, I am going to start fighting, and I will end up having to fight a wave of minions that come in my general direction, which can consist of a number of nasty little magical beasties. Thankfully, I do have my poisonous staff, which I can use against them, and I can use 2 different fire modes. In fact, all of the weapons, spells, and so on and so forth in the game have a main fire mode and an alternate fire mode, which usually have different effects. More often than not, it's just a case of this uses more mana but fires more bolts or fires faster, but every now and again they have completely different effects. In the case of the Serpent Staff, I can fire 4 poisonous bolts instead of 2, so it's very good for taking out large groups of smaller enemies. With the wand, the alternate attack is kind of like a shotgun, whereas the regular attack is a rapid-fire set of arcane bolts, which again has a recharge system involved in it. Not particularly powerful weapon, but it is required. You do need to use this thing, because the chances are you're not going to have anywhere near enough mana to make it work otherwise. And you'll probably know down at the bottom that there's actually slots for 4 different weapons, and that is true. The magic wand and 3 different types of weapon, which include the staff, alchemical weapons, which include things like fire bombs and this sort of fire cannon kind of thing, and spellbooks, which are usually AoE-style spells with different effects. And when you start each game, you are immediately given one of them at random, which is actually one of the awesome design decisions that this game made, which really answers a lot of the problems that I've had with this particular genre. You've watched videos, no doubt, on my channel before when I've dealt with first-person roguelite games, and I've usually had the same kind of criticisms. The thing about a first-person shooter is that you're often presented with a wide variety of enemy designs, level designs, and weapons to take them out with. But the problem when you translate that to a procedurally generated roguelite is that you usually miss out on things like weapon variety and proper level design, because it's all procedurally generated. Now, in this case, I wouldn't say that they do a particularly good job with the level design, or that they do an exceptionally good job with the level aesthetics. All the rooms look very interesting, and all of the floors have a different little theme to them. But what they do really well, which a lot of these games don't, is allow you to have multiple weapons and give you multiple weapons from the very start, and then make it all about gathering the resources to actually use those weapons in the first place. Now, every time you level up, you will be able to pick a perk, and these are randomly generated from an increasingly large pool of perks, and you'll also see just how much health you've got, which will gradually increase, and your mana pools will also gradually increase as well. We're going to get Scholar because I want to level up a little bit faster, and we'll move on to the next room. I'm a little bit low on mana, but I'm on full health, which is good, so that's always nice. We're going to fight some more minions. Now, outside of these minion arena rooms, which have to be cleared for you to advance, there are also trap rooms, which you have to traverse, some of which have treasures in them. There are shrine rooms, which allow you to offer things like mana and health to the gods in order to try and generate a random reward. Sometimes it goes wrong, as you might imagine. It is a roguelite after all, so stuff is going to go wrong at random. That's bit of a part of the genre that is pretty much inescapable. There are also things like treasure rooms, scroll rooms, which will give you backstory to the game and also give you bonus experience and things like that. Outside of that, though, you're going to be fighting a reasonably wide variety of enemy types, and that's actually what impressed me about the game as well. They throw a lot of different enemies at you from the very start, and they force you to switch up your tactics immediately, instead of throwing the same enemies at you over and over and over again. Indeed, the enemy variety is so large that one of them is a walking, talking, fighting carrot for some reason. I'm not even going to explain why these carrots are homicidal, but they certainly are. And one of the characters can be unlocked by killing 65 of these things. Now, I haven't actually seen enough carrots in order to do that. So there's a decent amount of enemy variety, to the point where you're not going to be seeing the same enemies all that often, and even when you do see them, they're going to be in combination with different enemies, which really shake the encounters up, which is kind of nice. Now, in order to get past each level, you have to collect a portal key, and use the portal key to unlock the boss room, which will then allow you to fight a boss, which is reasonably tough. And I've seen probably about 5 or 6 different bosses up to this point, and they all have their own different attack patterns. One of them is very bullet hell-esque. He'll throw out 4 waves of poison globs in a kind of bullet hell style. Ah, an amulet. Very nice. Yes, that will actually be very useful. I think I will use that to instantly recharge some of my mana, and then eventually it will recharge as well. But you've got to avoid his sort of whirls of poison. There's another boss where the room is designed with pillars in it that can be destroyed, and he'll fire a bunch of fiery skulls and create ads to go towards you. And the way that you deflect that is once he starts firing, you dodge behind the pillars and you try and deflect as much of it as possible, and then kill him before he destroys all the defenses in the room. There's another melee-centric one that'll do a lot of ground pounds that you have to jump in order to avoid. There's a decent amount of boss variety, basically, and the bosses are relatively challenging indeed. The game is actually very, very challenging indeed. And I think a lot of that has to come down to the fact that it is very, very stingy when it comes to health drops. The only way that you can get your health back outside of level up perks is to collect health files that drop from certain enemies, but I've gone through entire levels without seeing any of them, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, we'll get Bookworm. I'd like a greater variety if we don't mind. Go back through the trap room. I'm going to explore this level just a little bit more so I can gain a few more levels before I go and attack the boss. Although, with health being such a precious resource, you want to be just a little bit careful when it comes to doing that. Now, every now and again, you're going to run into a room that's going to have some weird buff or debuff attached to it, and you're going to have to deal with that as well. And again, that helps add to the variety of the experience, whereas otherwise you're just running into arenas, fighting a bunch of enemies until the medium bar goes down to 0, and then moving on to the next room. So when they shake it up with things like that, I very much appreciate it. And it seems like they've gone out of their way to really make sure that the combat variety in this game is kept at a reasonable level, which is what a lot of games in this genre absolutely fail to do. Other games in the genre focus on different things. Like, I'd say that Tower of Guns does a really good job of having very interesting level variety. It generates some really crazy levels with secrets and traps and big rooms with giant cannons in it. I don't think Ziggurat does as good a job of creating rooms. It's a lot of kind of fairly square rooms with pillars and things like that. But I've got to say, it's very aesthetically impressive. It's got a nice graphic style to it. It's got some really good colorful lighting effects and spell effects going off all over the place, which is awesome. But it generates more compelling combat experiences than other games in the genre. And it really is down to being able to pick up such a wide variety of weapons. And what a smart little thing to do, to give you immediately a randomly generated weapon at the start. You immediately get a weapon of some description, and every time you play the game, you're unlocking more weapons every time you die, so you gain a greater variety, which means that every time you start... Oh, looks like we're going to be doing carrots. All right, fair enough. Every time you start a new run, you are going to end up against something just a little bit different, because you ended up with a different set of abilities. And that changes your tactics up, and it really changes your experience, and I love that. And I think it's the real strength of roguelikes and roguelike games. It really contributes to their replayability, but not that many games in the emerging roguelite genre do it all that well. Ziggurat does it really, really well indeed. Now, mechanically, while the shooting system is fairly simple, I've got to give them credit for having alt-fire on every single weapon. Again, it makes the combat more interesting, and it focuses the game on resource conservation. Yes, I can keep using the shotgun ability with my magic wand, but it is going to drain my mana somewhat faster, and I do have to consistently watch out for that, because losing my mana at a critical moment can mean that I end up taking damage, which is very, very difficult to fix. This is also, of course, very true with the other weapons, and while the game, I'd say, becomes easier once you get multiple weapon types, and you can get a little bit unlucky, because every level you go through, you usually get another weapon, but if it's of the same type as one you already have, it ends up replacing it. So you can end up with only one of your mana pools being functional for several levels, which is part of the annoying random generation and nonsense that ends up going into roguelike games, unfortunately. I think it's perhaps something that some of these games need to look at, or at least provide some sort of compensation if that thing ends up happening. And this game doesn't have a store either. At least if it does, it's so far into the dungeon that I've never met up with it. And since it doesn't have a currency system, I can't really imagine that there would be one, unless you traded mana for it. That's a possibility, I suppose. Let's I'm gonna go with Vital Energy, there we go. Reduce the size of my mana pools, but maybe worth it for the extra health, we'll see. Bit of a trade-off. So you can't replace and fill out your arsenal very easily, and if the roll of the dice goes against you, you can end up just having a straight-up bad run. And I think it's unfortunately inherent to the genre, and something that I think the genre maybe needs to look at, because I know some people really enjoy that, and just going on a doomed run and trying to make the most of it is really enjoyable to them. To me, I find it to be a waste of time, and it can be extremely frustrating. So I'd like to see a little bit of balance there. But again, I do like the fact that they start you off with an extra weapon. The movement system is also very, very clean, and the combat system and just the general shooting is accurate, responsive, and generally enjoyable in terms of the speed at which you can pump out magical powers. You do get things like amulets, but what would be nice is if you got a bunch of activatable consumable items and things like that. The game doesn't seem to have any of that. I'd love to see, say, some activatable elixirs and things that you could get, and you could maybe add to a potion pouch and use at specific times, but unfortunately the game doesn't seem to have any of that, which it kind of sucks. It relies a little bit on the upgrades and the perks, really, for anything else, but I'd like to see stuff like consumable buffs that could be generated outside of merely collecting an amulet. And you don't really see a lot of amulets in the game either. You'll find them in those hidden chests every once in a while, but you can go through entire levels without seeing a single one of them. So they don't generate the treasure rooms all that often, it would seem, which is a little bit unfortunate. Alright, Halls of Despair, floor 2. Let's see what we have here. Aha, the Firestorm Grenade. That's good, because that is a different mana type, so that's going to make the next level a lot easier. This is an infirmary room, meaning that we're dealing with some weaker enemies, which is always nice. There we go. Put down some suppressing poison fire. We should be able to bring most of these guys out of the sky without too much of a problem. There we go. That's what we like to see. And then, of course, we can throw a few of these grenades. The weapons in general are very satisfying to use, which again is something that a lot of games in this genre absolutely fail to address. You've got to make your guns fun. And in this case, they've made a variety of magic spells, all of which are kind of enjoyable to use, whether it's simply because they're very colorful or whether they have simply very satisfying and varied effects. You know, throwing double firestorm grenades into a large group of enemies and watching them all explode is very, very enjoyable. It's very satisfying. And you've got things like destructible terrain in places as well that add to that particular feeling. Let's see. Enraged alchemy pouch. That might be useful. Yeah, we'll grab alchemy pouch because I'm using an alchemical weapon at the moment. Oh, let's not blow myself up with that, though. And there's just a good variety of weapons and things available as well, and I haven't even unlocked anywhere close to half of them. I actually went to the armory list, and there's so many things I haven't unlocked yet, and I've done, I estimate, probably about 20 runs. So, Steam claims I've been playing for 6 hours. I'd say it's probably closer to 4, but there are definitely a lot of things to unlock, and that means that I just keep coming back for more with Ziggurat. And this is not a genre that I tend to... Oh, it's messed with my weapons. That might not be good. Oh, it's given me a spell, and it's given me the cannon. Okay, that's kind of cool. I don't mind that too much. Alright, let's... we'll offer some health. I've got plenty of health. Let's see what benefit I can get. During next combat, items are more effective, but they also disappear faster. Alright then, we'll see how that goes. This game's kept me interested up to this point. It feels like a really well fleshed out product. It feels like early access actually benefited this game in a real way. Like they genuinely took real feedback and they fleshed the game out as much as possible before releasing it. And as a result, you've got a good variety of everything. A good variety of rooms, a good variety of weapons, a good variety of perks, a good variety of enemies. Which is what you need to keep people coming back in games like this. Alright. Damn, I don't have a staff, so we're just going to have to... We'll use the cannon for the time being. Unfortunately, not going to be massively effective. And there's poison in this room just to make matters even worse. Yeah. Of all the weapons that could have got the boosts, it was the one that I don't currently possess. That is certainly galling, but such is the way of the roguelite. It's very hard, but I don't feel it's unfair. I think maybe they could possibly give you a few more health vials from time to time. It seems like the drop rate is just so random that you can really just get horribly unlucky on one run and not end up getting anywhere close to the number of health vials that you really need to survive. But maybe I just need to play it on easy so I can unlock more stuff. I'm a stubborn beastie, though. I am trying my best to keep playing it on normal, and I can barely ever get past level 2, honestly. I've been to level 3 a few times, and that's actually a different environment entirely, which is pretty cool. And you start to face things like golems, which are very difficult enemies, but I have the desire to continue playing it, and that's maybe the most important thing about it. It does have the aspects of a first-person shooter. It reminds me a little bit of things like Heretic and Hexen that make it enjoyable. The smooth movement system, the solid combat, the enjoyable variety of spells at your disposal. A good theme well executed, frankly. I think it's safe to say that this is currently the best first-person roguelite that's on the market. I really do genuinely believe that, and it's for the reasons that I just gave. It is so very well fleshed out compared to other properties that are in this particular genre. They have done a phenomenal job here. Really, really fun. What are we going to go for? Warcry could be really useful. Let's go with that. The only thing that I don't really like is probably the music. It's a little bit repetitive, to say the least. They have standard exploration and combat music. I love the aesthetic of the game. As I said, it's really colorful, and I love the emphasis on colored lighting all over the place, especially with the spells. That makes it look great. And even the little tunnels between rooms often have quite a lot of visual variety, whether it be glowing mushrooms and leaves floating around, or whether it be fiery lava, which sometimes you have to jump over. It's just these small little details that really help bring the world to life, even though it is effectively just a magical dungeon. But the music is a little bit repetitive and generic, I've got to say. That's really one of the only things that I can bring against it, outside of problems that are really just inherent to the genre itself, and things that you're either just gonna love or hate on a purely subjective level. And as someone that does not particularly like this genre, I think Ziggurat might be slowly bringing me around to the idea that actually there's quite a lot of potential to be had here in the hands of the right developer with the right ideas. And it seems like Ziggurat is one of those truly great games that actually did come out of early access and really benefited a huge amount from it, rather than it simply being a case of give us money for our game before it's done. Really well fleshed out. It feels like a complete product, and something that I think that you should have a look at if you have an interest in first-person roguelite and magical spell-flinging adventures. The game has that in spades. Ziggurat, ladies and gentlemen. It is currently available on Steam for $15 or your regional equivalent. My name has been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.